We continue this section of our program with a discussion on ensuring equitable educational opportunities. As our Freedom Agenda states, we believe every American deserves the freedom to live in strong communities with good schools, and we must prioritize public investments in education. This conversation will feature Georgia Representative Phil Olaleye and Empower Schools CEO Alyssa Morton. And as they come up on stage, I want to take a moment to recognize Representative Olaleye for his Georgia Educational Opportunity Act, a winner in NewDEAL's Ideas Challenge this year. So congratulations, Representative. And Alyssa, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Jonathan. So I'm so honored to be here today. I see so many champions for educational equity in the room, so thank you all for the work that you're doing for our kids. And congratulations, Representative, on your win in the Ideas Challenge.
Thank you.
Round of applause, round of applause. I'm going to start with just a bit of framing around the educational landscape that we have right now, and then we're going to dig in to this idea that the representative from Georgia has introduced. And so I want to start by talking a little bit about where I come from in this work. I am the CEO of an educational equity nonprofit called Empower Schools, and we have the opportunity to work really at two different levels in the education system. We work on the ground with school districts, school leaders, educators, parents, with higher ed institutions, and with workforce partners to rethink how our students are experiencing school day to day and leverage strong policy to operationalize it for student outcomes. And we also work at the system level with policymakers, with elected officials, with state education agencies to put good ideas from practitioners into policy so that more people can benefit from great ideas and that more states and local communities around the country can learn from each other. This is all in the interest of opportunities for our students, and particularly our nation's most underestimated students, Black, Hispanic, rural students, and students experiencing poverty. So all of our work is particularly focused on those students. And this work is more critical now than ever. Our recent NAEP scores, the nation's report card, showed that only a third of our students in fourth grade can read on grade level, and we just had the largest decline we've ever had in math proficiency post-pandemic. And there are gaps that have existed for a long time and are getting wider between our Black and Hispanic students and our white students, and the students who are furthest behind and those who have gotten ahead. These gaps persist when we think about high school graduation, college matriculation and persistence, workforce participation, and wages. But I'm hopeful. Mayor Smathers told us we're in the business of hope, and so there are things to be hopeful for. So one is that I've seen communities across the country and policymakers in different states embrace a new concept for public district schools, and that's innovation schools. Innovation schools are succeeding in Spartanburg, South Carolina, in Indianapolis, in Denver, in Wilmington, Delaware, Springfield, Massachusetts. These schools are district schools that allow educators and families to customize the student experience for students and offer choices. They offer different educational models, but they benefit from being part of our democratically elected school districts. They get some of the advantages of charters without the controversy and without the separation. And so that's one of the promising things I've seen that's really driving more achievement and opportunity for the students least well served by our current system. The other promising and hopeful thing I'm seeing is a remixing of high school. So my colleague Chris Gabrielli teaches this class at the Harvard Graduate School of Education, and he's calling it remixing education. And this is a blurring of high school, college, and career, where students from ninth grade in many cases are starting to experience career-connected learning, mentorship, advising, industry partnerships, and earning college credits, and in many cases degrees, while they are still in high school. This opportunity has been expanded in state policy. Massachusetts just recently expanded their early college high schools program, and it's also allowed for more equitable distribution of funding. In my home state of Texas, which I know isn't known for its educational equity innovations, there is a college career and military readiness outcomes bonus that pays districts for every student above a threshold who makes it to college, the military enlistment, an associate's degree, or a credential of value. The high school district gets paid when those students achieve a post-secondary credential. And it's twice as high, $10,000, if the student is economically disadvantaged. It's changing the incentives for school districts, and it's changing what they design high schools to be. So those are just a few of the things that make me hopeful. But one of the things that's making me hopeful is the Georgia Educational Opportunity Act. And so I also want to hear from you, Phil, about what does this bill do for Georgians?
Well, first off, thank you, Alyssa. Thank you for all of your work, and it's great to finally join the New Leaders family. So a little background. My actual day job is running an education nonprofit in Atlanta, Georgia, where I live. And so much of our work exists within that opportunity gap that so many folks have mentioned this morning. And understanding that, unfortunately, levels of opportunity are not the same across the board. So much of a child's suite of opportunities depends on their family circumstances, the community or zip code they call home, and that provides great disparities in access to resources, access to opportunities, and access to so many things that determine success long term. In the state of Georgia, unfortunately, we exist on a very short list of states that currently do not provide additional funding and resources to local school districts serving children living in poverty. And so the act simply revises a very old and antiquated funding, our education, our state education funding formula, which decides how many dollars in resources are sent to urban districts, rural districts, and districts in between. Similar to a gifted program, similar to children with disabilities, there's a funding characteristic built into that revenue mechanism which decides this is a child that needs more, needs additional resources. English as a second language learner receives additional resources per pupil, but not children living in poverty. And so a lot of my work with my nonprofit in classrooms, working with educators, with families, guardians, and understanding there's so many barriers to opportunity and resources that create impossible conditions for success.
And you've spoken at length about the diversity of Georgia's educational landscape. I'm curious, how do you see school districts using this money?
Every school district and community has its own unique set of needs, and the beauty of this bill is that you get the resources and you decide, you have discretion over how those resources are used. So in rural parts of town, it was mentioned yesterday, one of the speakers at the White House talked about the digital divide. It could be used to provide Wi-Fi hotspots for students. It could be used to fund transportation. Our transportation revenue line item has been flat for the past 20 years, while expenses have ballooned five times. So the burden to fill in the gap falls on local school districts, and they're having to decide between academic enrichment and social supports for their children, for our children. Suburban parts of the state, it could be used for mental health counseling. It could be used for academic recovery. In my district and parts of Southwest and Southeast Atlanta, it could be used for nutrition programs. It's really hard to learn when you're stepping foot inside of a classroom on an empty stomach. It could be used to provide resources for children who come from homes where they lack stable housing. And so there are myriad of ways that these resources could really reach the hands of our hardworking educators, school leaders, and community stakeholders to level the playing field and create a level of freedom. We were talking about freedom earlier, but a level of freedom and opportunity for every single child to thrive and be prosperous.
And you speak about this work so passionately. I know you said it's your day job and it's also your policy priority. How did you personally shape your views on education?
I was that child. So my nonprofit, Next Generation Men and Women, we serve exclusively Title I high schools and build ecosystems of opportunity, bringing workforce in and community partners, technical colleges, and four-year universities to allow students on a monthly basis starting their freshman year, to enter spaces, to learn about fields and industries, to get excited about what's possible beyond the walls of a classroom or their greater community. Opportunities that I frankly did not have growing up in DeKalb County. My parents were immigrants. We had no familial net to fall into. We all we got. And I had the opportunity back in the 90s in Metro Atlanta. They would select and cherry pick black and brown students who had tested at or above a certain threshold to travel, take 2 buses, so at a 5:35 a.m. bus, and took a 7 o'clock bus to my school. Just to get your hands on a quality education. And so I see so much of my story in the youth that I serve, and I see so much of my story represented in the hopes and dreams of so many Georgia children across the state.
That's great. And I know Next Generation Men and Women now is doing a lot of that work I talked about in combining high school, college, and career. How do students in that program benefit from the services you're providing? And what impact are you having there?
I've been with the organization now 6 years, and there's nothing more powerful for a young person. We talked about hope and belief and just the power of hope and belief. There's nothing more powerful for a young person than crafting a vision for the future that's exciting. And just the plentiful possibilities that exist out there. And it's just about connecting the dots and creating bridges for our young people to literally get on buses and travel a few exits up 75, 85 in Georgia, and the world completely changes. And they get to experience fully their community, their home, and all that's there for them. And so when I think about our work and just the power of exposure and creating that vision and creating that confidence that I can do it. I see people who look like me, who come from similar backgrounds, who are successful and who are there to help me. There's no powerful notion, and that's the beloved community. That's what we aim to create and really build a system of support on behalf of young people who need it so much.
What advice do you have for other policymakers and elected leaders who are trying to champion these same issues in their own communities?
We talked a lot about listening to the hardworking folks doing the work on the ground. I've spent many moments in classrooms during the pandemic, underneath carports. I mean, we literally got out there and just listened to families and educators on what do you need. There's so many solutions. There's so much heart and passion and experience, but there's not much to work with in terms of the tools and resources that they need to fill too many gaps. Georgia has the greatest disparity between low income and higher income students, and I don't think that should be a surprise to anyone. And so listen and understand what's at the heart of what people in the community want. What are some solutions that can bring some progress and change to bear, and just being persistent and shooting your shot. I'm a freshman legislator. I saw a need. The funding mechanism has been around for almost my entire life. I was born in '85. It was created in '86, and it has not been revised since, which is unacceptable. And so myself and other Democrats are fighting the charge, and we're going to continue to push for educational freedom and opportunity for all children, irrespective of their family's income, their circumstances. We believe they have the potential and talent to thrive.
That's so helpful. And this morning we heard too, bipartisanship, while rare, is not dead. And I'm curious, do you see opportunities working across the aisle for education?
Well, in Georgia, you have no choice. And frankly, I've learned a ton. The bill is bipartisan. I was able to work with a dear friend of mine, the dean of our house, to be a co-sponsor and find ways to improve and enhance the political viability of the bill. Nothing matters more than getting it done and delivering real tangible results and resources to schools and folks on the ground supporting, loving on, motivating, and developing our most precious resource, our youth. And so you have to be willing to maintain an open mind and work with anyone who's going to center our children and center our state's future, and push forth legislation that's going to make a difference in their lives and really enhance the strength and resilience of our communities.
Great. Well, we have time for an audience question or two. So if folks want to ask a question, feel free. I think, great. We have a mic in the back.
Sorry, I don't mean to monopolize the questions, but I was thinking about any ideas you might have about innovations in civic education. I know that Maryland, for example, just recently launched a service year, and I think it might be the first state in the nation to do so, which is really exciting. But I'm curious if you have any similar ideas or anything to share on that front.
You're the expert.
Maryland's example is the one I was thinking of too. I mean, we've certainly seen individual schools embrace different pathway and career exposure opportunities for students. And so having more schools with the flexibility to think about how they calendar, how they provide internships and apprenticeships to students, and what coursework they pull into their core curriculum. And so certainly pathway programs can embed college courses, but also, thematic educational opportunities and exploration that way. And I think we're increasingly seeing more of that at the local level. And so where, mayor's offices have said, hey, we want to build partnerships with local high schools where students embed in our, city government. Cajon Valley in California actually has deep partnerships between the school district and all of the city government entities. And they have a rotating cast of high school students interning at all the different local government jobs. And a lot of those jobs will ultimately pay for those students to get higher education. And so you can start working right after high school, but continue your education with support from the government. And so I think that's been a promising model in California, but I'm sure there are others, and I'd love to hear more about the ones that folks here know. Yes.
Good morning. Marvin Pendarvis, State Representative out of South Carolina. This question is for the representative. One, I do understand the challenge you have in working across the aisle in South Carolina. We're similarly situated to you all in Georgia. But I did want to ask a question about HB 668. One, how many, I know that it says that you're one of 6 states that does not allocate funds. Can you tell me the other states, if you know off the top of your head, that do not do that? And then what is the strategy that I guess that you're employing to try to get it across the desks and signed into law this coming session?
Great question. Thank you. Off the top of my head, I know our neighbor to the south is on the list, and we actually built this bill off of the work that you all did back in, I want to say 2021, in creating a funding characteristic to provide additional funding for children living in poverty. So thank you for the good work. A lot of it is working with our chairman and the rural, both Dems and Republicans. They understand the power of public schools and what a public school means to their community. It's the beacon of civil society, football games on Friday, community events, jobs, workforce development. And so they don't have many private school options. I know it was mentioned earlier, this push to privatize education and really defund our public schools at the expense of our children and taxpayers, and to create these islands of despair and really difficult situations where we concentrate our poor and really make it difficult to do already hard work that sits before many educators and school leaders. So leaning on a lot of my rural colleagues, leaning on our education chair and appropriations chair to just continue to push, continue to pull community members and stakeholders and advocates into the process so that they're hearing directly from their constituents, particularly those representatives who are amenable and open to the real need to finally invest fully in our public schools and our children. So we're going to continue to fight. We're going to continue to keep an open dialogue. It's not a novel idea, as I mentioned before. If anything, let's tap into the competitive juices of individuals. We don't want to be last in the Southeast, right? South Carolina just beat us to the punch. Let's not let looking at. Yeah, we don't want to lose anything to Florida. I'm going to call them out. So let's just get it done. Let's get it done once and for all and join the rest of the country in putting our children first.
Great. I think we have one more question in the back. Oh, go ahead.
Hi.
Two more? Okay.
I'll try to go fast. I'm Natalia Macker. I'm a county commissioner in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. And I'm curious just to hear any thoughts about the growing mental health challenges that are presenting in schools and what educators and other school professionals are having to take on in that space.
It's real, especially post-pandemic, suicidal ideation, mental health challenges and crises being felt across the board with very little infrastructure support within the schools to confront the challenge and to support our young people. And so it's tough. Again, if you're looking at counselor to student ratio or the other way around, it's, 400, 500 students per, 600, 750 students per. And if you look at more affluent schools, that number shrinks where you have more intimacy and can be more responsive to the needs of young folks within those schools. And so resources play a huge role in prioritizing the mental health and wellness of our students and children and providing schools and school districts with the resources they need to combat that.
Yeah, thank you both. Matt Meyer, County Executive from Newcastle County, Delaware, candidate for governor. Can you talk a little bit about the political opportunity / challenge of promoting and proposing your innovative programs with teachers unions?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, Empower Schools works in states that have really strong teachers unions, and they've been good partners to us in many cases. And so I think part of it depends on the structure of the enabling legislation. But we have seen innovation schools thrive with collective bargaining agreements. They're actually, in many cases, structured as teacher-powered schools where educators have more decision-making authority over things like the school schedule, the staffing model, and when they have control over the budget, they make decisions like more mental health professionals and, redefine what the day looks like and what the family engagement looks like and things like that. And so one example I would give is in Springfield, Massachusetts. The Springfield Empowerment Zone partnership is made up of district schools, and that partnership, the group of schools, has a separate collective bargaining agreement with the union. So there's a district collective bargaining agreement that's longer and more detailed, and then a zone collective bargaining agreement that authorizes elected teacher leadership teams at each campus to make the decisions about how that campus operates. And so those teams have made different decisions in different cases, but what's important is that they're owned by the teachers. And that partnership's in its 9th year now. When that union agreement came up for renewal, it had a 96% support vote from the teachers in those schools. All right, well, thank you. Yes, please welcome me in thanking Representative Alale.